3 years of beatings and abuse until a cowboy walked through the door. An emotional Wild West tale. The Slap in Blackwood's Store. June 3rd, 1876, Abilene, Kansas. The bell over Blackwood's door snapped once, sharp as a spur strike, and every head in the store lifted like it was pulled by the same string. Dust floated in the heat slanting through the front windows. Flour sacks were stacked like small graves along the wall. A fly circled the molasses barrel in lazy loops. Somebody's boot scraped the plank floor, nervous, trying to sound casual. I was behind the counter, counting change when I saw her. Ka, whispering wind, came in with her eyes lowered and her shoulders drawn in, the way a person walks when they've learned the world is allowed to touch them without asking. She carried a small basket, no hat, no shade, just that braid down her back and a faint bruise blooming along her jaw like someone had pressed a thumb into soft fruit. Mr. Blackwood stepped out from the shelves. He was a thick man with a neat beard and a smile that never reached the part of his face that mattered. He watched Ka like she was a stray that might steal food. "You're late," he said. Ka's lips moved, but no sound came at first. Then, quiet as ash, "The creek rose. I had to go around." Blackwood's hand came up without hurry. The slap cracked through the store, loud enough to startle the fly. Ka's head snapped sideways, the basket tipped, a tin of coffee rolled across the floor and thunked against my boot. No one moved. Not the ranch hands pretending to study nails, not the older woman clutching cloth, not even the boy by the door who watched with wide, helpless eyes. The town did what it always did. It looked away. Something in me went cold and steady. I bent, picked up the tin, and set it back in her basket like that small act could fix what everyone had just allowed. Blackwood leaned close to Ka. "You don't make excuses in my store." Ka nodded once. Her cheek reddened. Her fingers shook as she gathered what spilled. Then the door opened again. A man stepped in, tall, sun-browned, coat hanging loose like he'd slept in it. Dust clung to his boots in thick layers, and there was a stitched scar along his throat that pulled when he swallowed. A bounty hunter if the rifle on his shoulder didn't lie. He paused when he saw Ka's face. Not a long pause, just long enough to notice the bruise, the fear, the way the room had decided to be cowardly. Blackwood straightened, smile returning like a curtain. "Afternoon," Blackwood said, polite now. "What can I do for you, friend?" The stranger's eyes didn't leave Ka. His jaw worked once, like he was biting down on something old. Then he said, quiet but cutting, "You can take your hand off her." The store went still. Even the dust seemed to hang in place. Blackwood chuckled like he'd heard a joke. "This is town business." The stranger shifted the rifle strap on his shoulder. His gaze turned, slow and direct, landing on every face that had looked away. "Then this town's sick," he said. Ka's eyes lifted for the first time. They met mine for a heartbeat, wet, bright, trying not to hope. And in that instant, I understood what danger really was. Not Blackwood's hand, not the rifle, but what happens when a man finally decides he's done watching. A bounty hunter's old wound. The stranger didn't reach for his rifle. That mattered. Men who plan to kill make different movements. This man stayed loose, balanced, like he was standing on ground that had already given way once before. "My name's Cole Mercer," he said. "I'm here for supplies, not trouble." Blackwood snorted, Then mind your own. Cole's eyes finally left Ka. When they met Blackwood's, something old and rough showed through, like a scar that never quite stopped hurting. "I've seen this before," Cole said. "Different town, same kind of man." Blackwood's smile thinned. "You accusing me of something?" Cole touched the stitched mark at his throat, not rubbing, just resting his fingers there. "Last time I didn't speak up, cost a woman her life." No one breathed. Ka stood very still. Her hand hovered near her basket, like it might drop again if she relaxed. "You don't know her," Blackwood said. Cole shook his head. "Don't need to." He turned then, not away, but sideways, putting himself between Blackwood and Ka without saying that's what he was doing. The gesture was quiet, protective, dangerous. "I'll pay for her goods," Cole said, pulling coins from his pocket and setting them on the counter. "And mine." Blackwood's jaw tightened. "She pays her own way." Cole leaned closer, not threatening, certain. "You already took enough." The room shifted, not toward justice, toward discomfort. That's where towns live when they're afraid. Blackwood glanced around, measuring support. He found none. Cowardice looks like absence when it's tested. "Take your things," Blackwood said sharply to Ka, "and go." Ka hesitated. 3 years of learning when to obey doesn't vanish in a breath. Cole didn't touch her. He just waited. Finally, she stepped back, then another step, basket tight to her chest. At the door, she paused. "Thank you," she whispered. The words trembled like they weren't used often. Cole nodded once. Outside, hooves passed, a wagon rattled. Life continued the way it always did after cruelty. Too fast. Then Cole turned to me. "You run this counter?" I nodded. "You see it often?" I did not lie. "Every day." His mouth pressed into a line. "Then it's deeper than one slap." Blackwood barked. "You're done here." Cole met my eyes. "I won't be." And when he stepped back into the sun, I knew something had shifted. Not because a man arrived with a rifle, but because someone finally decided the wound didn't get to stay hidden. Ka, whispering wind, endures. Ka didn't go home after the store. She went to the cottonwoods by the bend in the creek, where the water moved slow and the sound of town couldn't reach. I knew because I followed at a distance, the way women here learned to do when trouble showed its teeth. She knelt at the water's edge and pressed her palms flat against the mud, like she was steadying herself against the earth. Her breath came uneven, not sobbing, holding. 3 years will teach a person how to survive quietly. I stayed back, hidden by the trees, until she spoke. "They'll say I asked for it," she said to no one. "They always do." I stepped out then. They say that about anything they're afraid to stop. She startled, then recognized me. Her shoulders eased an inch. "You shouldn't follow me," she said. "Someone should," I answered. She studied my face, searching for the lie. Finding none, she turned back to the creek. "He owns the store, the feed, the land behind the North Road. His brother's the sheriff." That last part landed heavy. "No one crosses him," she went on. "If I leave, I starve. If I stay, I disappear slow." The water lapped at the bank, patient, unjudging. I understood that more than I wanted to. The sound of hooves carried faintly, then stopped. Cole appeared between the trees, hat in hand, like he knew better than to come in loud. He didn't look at Ka's face right away. He crouched instead, fingers brushing the scar at his throat again. "I won't ask you to trust me. I won't ask you to leave today." Ka's eyes flicked up, curious despite herself.
I just want you to know something. There are ways to stop men like him without dying for it." She laughed, short and bitter. "You don't know this town." Cole met her gaze then. "I know the kind." Silence settled, not empty, waiting. Ka drew a slow breath. "What happens if I say no?" Cole didn't hesitate. "Then I walk away, and I remember your name." That did something to her. I saw it. The way being seen, even briefly, can break a long-held shape. She stood, wiped her hands on her skirt. "Then listen," she said, "because if you're going to stir this ground, you should know what's buried." And in that shade by the creek, Ka, whispering wind, began to tell the truth the town had spent years refusing to hear.
The town that looks away. Ka's story didn't shock me. That was the part that burned. Every mark on her skin had a memory tied to it. Every rule in Blackwood's store had been written with her obedience in mind. He decided when she worked, what she owed, which road she walked home. When she spoke up once, just once, he made sure the lesson lasted. "The first time," she said, staring at the creek, "I thought it was my fault." Cole's jaw tightened. Mine did too. That's how power survives here, not by strength, by repetition. Word spread anyway. It always does, even when no one wants to admit they heard it. By nightfall, shutters closed earlier than usual. Men crossed the street to avoid Cole. Women nodded to Ka with eyes full of apology and feet that kept moving. The town chose quiet. The next morning, Martha came to the store before sunup. Martha had been here longer than any of us, ran the boarding house, buried 2 husbands, saw Dust Creek rise and fall and swallow men whole. If wisdom had a spine, it would look like hers. She set her basket down hard. "You stirred him," she said to me. "I didn't lift a hand," I replied. "Doesn't matter," she said. "Blackwood's brother rode out last night. Sheriff's making rounds where he never does." I felt my stomach sink. Martha leaned closer. "That bounty hunter, he's marked now. So's the girl." Cole stood near the doorway, pretending not to listen. He was listening. Martha's eyes found him. "Men like Blackwood don't lose unless they're bled or shamed, and this town won't help with either." Cole tipped his hat. "Then it's good I don't need the town." She studied him a long moment. Brave's not the same as careful. That night, someone smashed the lantern outside Ka's door. The night after that, her work was gone, her credit erased. Blackwood didn't touch her again, not with his hand, but he didn't have to. Hunger does a cleaner job. Cole stayed at the edge of things, watching, asking questions that sounded harmless, following trails nobody thought mattered. Rustlers had been moving cattle through the North Draw for months. Everyone knew, nobody named names. Turns out Blackwood's ledgers didn't add up, and his brother's badge had been looking the other way. Truth leaves tracks. It was only a matter of time before someone followed them. The town still looked away, but now it was nervous doing it, and that meant the ground was starting to shift.
Rustler found, corruption exposed. The rustler wasn't a rumor. He was a pattern. Cole proved it the way men like him always do, quietly, patiently, with ink instead of fists. He spent days riding the North Draw, nights talking to people who'd already been hurt enough to stop lying. He traded bounty notices for names, whiskey for dates, silence for trust. I watched him become invisible. That's the kind of man who scares a town more than a gunfighter, one who doesn't need applause. By the end of the week, he had a ledger that wasn't Blackwood's but matched it line for line. Missing cattle that reappeared 2 counties over, brands altered just enough to pass, fees waived by the sheriff's office with a signature that matched Blackwood's brother's hand. Cole brought the papers to me first. "Truth travels better when it walks slow," he said. Caw didn't know yet. She was working where she could, mending, scrubbing, keeping herself fed by kindness instead of credit. She didn't ask questions. She'd learned questions came with a cost. The sheriff rode into town at noon 2 days later. That was when everyone knew. His horse was lathered, his eyes wouldn't settle. He went straight to Blackwood's office behind the store. Doors closed, voices rose, something shattered. No one stepped closer. Then Cole walked across the street in full daylight, no rifle in his hands, just a folded warrant bearing 3 seals and the name of a circuit judge who didn't owe Blackwood anything. He knocked once. When the door opened, the sheriff saw the papers and went pale. Blackwood laughed, loud, fake. "This is nonsense." Cole didn't argue. He handed the warrant over like it weighed nothing. Rustling paper sounds small, but that day it cracked the street in half. The sheriff tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to blame rustlers that didn't exist. Cole listened, then said, "You can resign or you can be arrested." Silence fell hard. Blackwood's smile collapsed. For the first time I saw him reach for someone else's strength and find none. By dusk, word spread beyond Dust Creek. Men rode in who didn't know Blackwood's name and didn't care to learn it kindly. Caw stood beside me as they let him out. Her hands shook, not with fear, with release. Cole didn't look at Caw. He watched the town instead, watched who flinched, watched who didn't. Justice didn't arrive with gunfire. It arrived with paper, patience, and the refusal to look away. And that was worse for men who'd lived on silence their whole lives. Riding out of Dust Creek. Blackwood didn't fight when they took him. That was the last thing anyone expected. No shouting, no reach for a hidden pistol, just a man suddenly lighter, like all the weight he'd been pressing onto others had finally left his body and he didn't know how to stand without it. His brother resigned before sundown, left his badge on the sheriff's desk and rode out alone, dust swallowing the sound of hooves the way this land always does, quick, final, uncaring. The town didn't celebrate. It doesn't know how. People went back to work slower than usual. Doors stayed open longer. Eyes met, then dropped. Shame takes time to settle into its proper place. Cad didn't speak for 2 days. She stayed at Martha's boarding house, sitting on the back steps in the mornings, letting the sun reach her face without flinching. On the 3rd day, she asked for a horse, not to run, to choose. Cole was packing when she found him at the edge of town. His saddle lay open, bedroll tight, life pared down to what could be carried. "You're leaving," she said. "Yes." She nodded. "Good." That surprised him. "I don't want escape. I want distance. There's a difference." He smiled then, small, respectful. "There is." They sat by the fire that night, not touching, just sharing heat and quiet. Kai told him the rest, the parts she hadn't known how to name before. Cole didn't interrupt. He never did. In the morning, he left her a letter. No promises, no plans, no demands, just a place, a year from now, if she ever wanted to arrive without being chased by her past. 1 year passed. Kai learned to breathe without counting, to sleep without listening, to speak without shrinking. She worked land that answered only to weather and effort. Her hands grew steady. Her laughter came back in pieces. When she rode into the ranch at dawn, the cattle lifted their heads. Cole stepped out of the barn and stopped. Not because he was shocked, because he understood what it meant to be chosen freely. Some towns rot because no one speaks.
Some people survive because they do. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever watched wrong happen and felt the cost of silence, remember this. Justice doesn't always come with blood. Sometimes it comes when someone finally refuses to look away. Follow for more emotional Wild West tales about courage, truth, and becoming whole again.